Hello, loves. Have you noticed that you are changing or have changed during or after a narcissistic relationship? Or do you know somebody who is undergoing some really big changes because of one of these relationships? In this video, I want to talk about 7 ways that narcissistic abuse changes us. It's often a very challenging thing to come to terms with. It's not always great. Some of the changes are awesome though as well, and so I want to talk about that too. Usually it's a paradoxical thing. We lose parts of ourselves, and then we also gain a deeper sense of knowing of ourselves than maybe we had before. But there's usually a lot of grief and a lot of confusion along the way, and I hope that this video can help you sort through a little bit of the murkiness around all of that. The first way that we change is that we might become more reactive than normal. So if you are undergoing one of these relationships, you know that the narcissist will continue to push you until you react. So you might find yourself having fits a little bit more often. You might find yourself yelling. Even though you've never yelled in a relationship before, you might find yourself like slamming doors, feeling really upset, and even, going into bouts of rage yourself. This is something that's called reactive abuse. It's a really tricky thing. A lot of times when we are in a narcissistic relationship, we think that we are the problem because we're being told that we're the problem, and we do act out. At some point, it's really hard not to, because the narcissistic individual is trying to continue to push you until you do act out. And if you do it, it will confirm their entire story that you're a terrible human being, and make them look like the good guy. So they want the fight. They will continue to say things that are more and more and more intense and hurtful until you snap. Oftentimes people tell me this all the time, that their fuse gets longer and longer. I'll talk about that in a second. You might find yourself reacting in ways that you've never experienced before in your life. That was the only time I ever yelled "fuck you" at a person or slammed doors. That's just not my MO. It never was. But in that relationship, I did that a few times for sure. Not proud of it. It scared me. However, these were responses to long conversations, trying to, negotiate, or, diffusing, like trying to diffuse the bomb of someone else's rage. But they'd always like stick it in there one last time, and then I would blow. So I found myself being highly reactive during that time. And even after the relationship, like if you were out of it, you might find yourself a little, what's the word? Jumpy. You might find yourself being jumpy. That was the case for me for years. Your nervous system gets really dysregulated in these situations, and anxiety is commonplace, sadly. And so sometimes things like loud noises, even the sounds of keys, footsteps, different things that might trigger memory of your experience in that relationship can cause you to feel more reactive in the future. And that's a really hard thing to experience, right? Because your peace has been eroded away. The second way that you might change, and you might find this an interesting paradox and happening at the same time as the first way that we just talked about, is that you'll also become more tolerant of abuse and poor behavior. So while you may find yourself being more reactive in some ways, you might also find yourself being more tolerant and tempered and stoic, and taking a lot longer for you to respond or react than you used to, because you're trained to if I react to that, then that's going to cause a big explosion over there. So don't react, don't react, don't react, and you kind of hold your ground for a lot longer. But at some point that person is going to push you over the edge, because that is their intention to do so. But it's a really interesting thing. It's as if on one hand you become more resilient, and on the other hand you become more broken down and shaky and find yourself um, with more thin skin. So it's like you get a thicker skin and a thinner skin at the same time. I don't really know how to fully describe that, but if you know exactly what I'm talking about. And in some cases, this higher tolerance can be a problem. If you know, are staying in that relationship, you know, and you tolerate more and more and more, that will erode you over time. As well as, you know, if you leave one of these relationships and you haven't gone through a healing process, especially a deep process with someone who specializes in this kind of thing, it might be easier to jump into a new relationship with someone who does similar things. You're just kind of used to it at that point. That can set you up for another challenging relationship afterwards. So be mindful if you have found yourself to be more tolerant of abuse. That's actually not something that you want to be. It keeps you safe when you are in that relationship. But after you've extracted yourself from that situation, it is a very good thing to do to lose your tolerance for any abusive behavior. Losing that tolerance is what's going to help you avoid narcissistic relationships in the future. And it's also going to call in really healthy people, because healthy people, you know, they want to be with someone who's not going to tolerate any bullshit. The third way narcissistic abuse changes you is that your body chemistry changes drastically. This can affect your hormones, definitely affects your chemical balance. So you're dealing with high levels of cortisol and adrenaline being released into your bloodstream, probably many times a day, at least many times a week. These are chemicals that were designed to put us into action, into fight or flight, to fight off a predator, an attacker, a tiger, whatever. Like, that's what these chemicals are for. We're not designed to have high levels of those in our system every day and consistently. It actually starts to break down the organs in our body. It's really bad for us, and it throws our hormones out of balance. People start to develop autoimmune disorders. This has been studied. It's a very unfortunate effect. I experienced that as well. I started to exhibit those symptoms after experiencing massive adrenal overload and then adrenal fatigue. It will physically change you, not in good ways. Some people's hair starts falling out. Mine went really white really quick, which, you know, is pretty, but yeah, just go to the salon if you want to do that. Chemical imbalances that result from narcissistic abuse can take a huge toll in a person. Oftentimes there's high levels of anxiety, depression, fatigue, brain fog, eating disorders, sleeping disorders, autoimmune disorders. Then there is emotional dysregulation, which is consistent, and then even brain damage. Yes, you heard that right. This kind of trauma over time actually damages the gray matter of your brain. And that's why a lot of survivors of this kind of abuse can't think straight during the abuse and afterwards. It takes a very long time for the brain to recover. So if you have noticed problems in your cognition, or you have a friend that you notice like just doesn't think right anymore, that's a thing. Narcissistic abuse can cause this. So just know, like, it is a very scary thing. I'm not going to tell you to not be afraid, but just know it is a normal thing that will reset over time. I don't think that we ever go back to the person that we were before all of that happened. The good thing is that the brain is, you know, we have neuroelasticity. You know, the brain went that way, it can come back this way. However, I don't know, like, as many years out as I am, I still struggle in my cognition where I did not before. So that's something to, yeah, I guess I don't know, fuck, just like accept it. Yeah, it's a pisser. Yeah, that person, yeah, it's fucked up. I'm so sorry. The fourth way you change after this kind of experience is that you become less trusting. You don't trust other people, and you don't trust yourself. You don't trust reality as easily as you used to. And this can feel like a huge loss of innocence. It can cause a person to isolate. It can cause, your friends and other people to feel like, you're a little bit of a curmudgeon. um, yeah, it can cause you to feel a little like less popular or just always on edge. It can, that can naturally increase anxiety levels and, depression. You feel sad that your open-hearted, formerly trusting spirit is no longer as open and shiny as it once was. Like, it's a really sad thing to experience. On the other hand, though, this can be a good thing because usually if we are attracting and attracted to narcissistic people, it might mean that we're a little bit too trusting to begin with. I know this was the case for me. I always just like really wanted to always give people the benefit of the doubt. And, it was more like innocent until you're proven guilty. I would just really deeply trust people. But now I'm not so much that way anymore. And there is a sadness and some grief that comes along with that. But then there's also a sense of relief and a different kind of joy, right? Like if I intuit a person might not be safe for me, and usually later on I find out why. There's a warmth, like a sense of warmth inside that and gratitude that I did not trust that person. The fifth way that narcissistic abuse changes us, you're not gonna like this one, is that we actually become more narcissistic for a time. This can get really confusing. I actually just listened to a video from Dr. Ramani earlier today, and she was talking about how so many of her clients are the ones who are asking if they are narcissistic in the relationship with a narcissist. That's very common. Usually a huge reason for that is because the narcissist is blaming you and accusing you for everything that they're doing to you, which is, obviously, as you know, a total mindfuck. So you do question yourself because you are an introspective person, so you are going to ask questions like that. And there is a little bit of truth to it. Like a person who is undergoing that kind of abuse does actually show some more narcissistic traits. Because a person's sense of self is being diminished and stripped away day by day, that is actually causing a narcissistic injury. So when that happens, a person needs to gain some sort of control or grip on their own reality. And when it's being stripped away and when that person's shame is being, cast upon you and dumped into your system, we tend to act out in more immature and maladaptive ways, get a little bit more childish. And narcissistic behavior is very childish behavior. So yeah, like I said, you might start screaming at somebody when they are abusing you. You might actually, throw something down because you just can't handle it anymore. You might start really needing more attention and needing validation from people, right? And you think about that, like, yeah, that is a narcissistic tendency, needing a lot of external validation. I mean, we all need validation to a certain degree, but if someone is consistently invalidating you and gaslighting you and robbing you of your reality and your identity, you're going to double down on trying to get those needs of validation met. And so it's going to cause you to act in a more narcissistic way. So that's just one example, but there are many ways in which narcissistic tendencies can play out. And when a person is in a lot of distress, then that tends to happen. This will change over time. As soon as you are in a safe place and with safe people, those tendencies will diminish, they will go away. It is a little scary and disconcerting when it's happening, but it's also very normal for, a person to act in more narcissistic ways when they are being narcissistically abused. The sixth way you might change is you might get stuck in a deep freeze. So the freeze response comes online if our fight and our flight don't work. Oftentimes we end up fawning for the narcissist as well. That's a response where you just try to do what they want in order to keep the peace. That is very common. At some point, you might just also freeze. If the trauma becomes too much, your system just goes into lockdown, and this can be so hard. It can strip you of the lively being that you once were. I spent years in this response, like not really being able to do the things that I wanted to do because my body was I was just locked up. There is a part of the subconscious mind that is trying to conserve energy at all costs. So if you have an experience where nothing you say or nothing you do is helpful, and everything that you do say or do comes back at you and blows up in your face, then your whole nervous system is going to try to keep you safe by just completely going into freeze mode. And it is absolutely terrifying. It does wear off after time, but my God, it can take a long time. So if you are experiencing that, please just go easy on yourself. Do what you can every day. Take it one step at a time. Be gentle, be loving with yourself. Just know that you're not completely broken. You feel and you probably, you're broken right now, but you will heal. This takes time to thaw out. Working with a professional who can help you out of a freeze response can really assist you in moving forward and getting back online, because it is a terrifying place to be. And the seventh way that you might change after a narcissistic relationship is that you just might not be the happy and lighthearted and open and fun and playful person that you once were. And that's hard. There is a heaviness that comes over us when we experience these things. It's not just that we are experiencing a really scary thing from one person, but usually our community of mutual friends and allies, they don't believe us either. Oftentimes when the narcissist leaves the relationship, they'll do a smear campaign, and so we'll feel very isolated from friends that they've told God knows what kind of stories to about us. So with all of that, it's heavy. It's a lot to hold in your heart. It's a lot to carry forward in your life, and there's probably going to be part of you that misses the more innocent version of you before all of this happened. And it's a really hard thing to feel and to know that a relationship with one person took that spark from you. Now, over time, you'll get bits of that back. It'll come back in certain ways. Overall, there's this undertone now that's got carved pretty deep. However, the beautiful thing about that is that there is a deeper sense of compassion and empathy for other people who are going through such things. Obviously, I'm still unraveling parts of this in my mind, and I think that that's likely, a lifelong thing that we end up having to do is, just tease away the knots that this left in our spirit over time. And each one we unfurl is a great celebration. It's really hard to leave the more naive and innocent version of ourselves behind. There's a lot of grief involved in that, and so hold yourself well, care for yourself. That part of you is still inside, but is much more protected now. And that is perhaps a good thing. You'll find the people in your life who you can let that part of yourself out with. Safe people, loving people, people who will appreciate your your levity and your silliness and your free spirit. Um, not everybody deserves that side of you, as you've learned. Not everybody is a safe place for that, as you've learned. And usually those really good people who accept your beauty, hopefully they will also accept your heaviness as well. And those are the people that you want to surround yourself with in your life, people who accept all of you. Because, there's a weight now. And there is an understanding of certain people. There's an understanding of this. I see it as it's like a computer virus, right? It's a program, and it can get passed on from person to person, from system to system. Usually a narcissistic person would come into your life and completely pull the rug out from underneath you and show you things you've never seen before, would never wish on anybody, and definitely wish you had never experienced or seen yourself. But alas, it's there. There's a new way of seeing the world that's a little bit heavy. It's just heavy. In some ways, I think that heaviness can carve out even more compassion and empathy and awareness around what a lot of people go through and have gone through, especially if we had not experienced that ourselves. I know I feel it on the flip side when people who they had no idea or couldn't even grasp what I was trying to convey long ago, and now they've gone through a similar thing, which is so sad. But now they get it, So causes us to grow up in a really weird way. So if you have noticed these changes in yourself, and if you're at all freaked out by them, it's normal to be freaked out by them. It's also very normal to be going through these changes or have had these things happen or shifted in your reality. Just please be compassionate with yourself. I want to say it's okay, even though it's not okay. Like, none of this is okay, but you are going to be okay. Just keep going day by day. Things will get better. You will heal. It takes time. Be patient with yourself, and please find people around you who are supportive and loving and caring. And if any of these changes are so extreme that you can't handle them, like, please, please, please get support from a licensed professional, from a narcissistic abuse recovery specialist. They know the deep ways to kind of hack this out of your system and get you on track again. It's very important. All right, sending you so much love, and I'll see you in the next one.